Welcome back to Closing Bell. Statistics South Africa says the country's GDP for the second quarter of 2017 was at 2.5% quarter-on-quarter and 1.1% year-on-year. The agency says the largest positive contributor to growth in GDP in the second quarter was the agriculture, forestry and fishing industries, which increased by 33.6%. Joining us to unpack these figures is Maarten Ackerman. He's the Chief Economist and Advisory Partner at Citadel. A very good afternoon to you, Maarten. I'm smiling. It's good. We're finally out of recession, well, for now. But 2.5%, is that a number that you were looking for?
Yeah, I think the market definitely expected 2 plus something. That's why the financial markets today probably didn't overreact. But I think we should be careful to celebrate too soon. We'll take anything.
Yes.
You know, 2.5 is not a bad number, but we need much more than that. Now, I use the example, it's almost like the rain in Cape Town at the moment. So a rainy day is wonderful, but the dams are still empty. And I think, yes, technically we're out of a recession. Of course, you know, we don't have we had 2 negative quarters. Now we've got a positive one. But if you look at the year-on-year growth, which is 1.1, you know, in my mind, that's maybe not a recession, but economic drought. Yeah. Because 1% is just not enough for us to solve the issues that we're facing.
Also a big boost from agriculture, but that's luck. A good rains after a drought.
Base effect, so we're measuring from last year where we had a severe drought. So taking that base effect into account, that's where we see the recovery from. Again, we'll take that. That's a very, very good number. It's only 5% of the economy, so it contributed about 0.7 to that 2.5% what we're talking about. The other sectors as well, we need to remember that we are measuring from a very low base. You know, the first quarter numbers has been adjusted a little bit. It's still down minus 0.6, but so we need to remember that this 2.5 is also not just a recovery altogether, but measuring from that low base in the first quarter.
The statistician General really talking about the agricultural sector. Even though we saw growth within the sector, the employment picture within the sector is not that great because of the mechanization that's happening there.
Yeah, so employment is a very different story in South Africa. We know that the biggest employment is happening in government, or it's been happening there since about 2008. We don't see really employment growth in agriculture, mining, manufacturing, which is actually the driving engine of the economy. A couple of reasons for that. One is the fact that technology is coming in, but technology can also improve your productivity. So it's not always bad in terms of that. But that's the area of the economy that we need to keep growing or create more jobs. And that will make this 2.5 that we see later on a 3.5, 4.5, and make it more sustainable. Because I think right now where we are, you know, it's great to get to 2.5, but we're not sure exactly how the second half of this year will look like at this point in time.
I was going to say also manufacturing had a good number earlier, so that looks encouraging as well. So I was going to ask you, looking forward, what are the factors we're looking at now? And historically, the second quarter of the year, third quarter of the year, what are we looking at?
Yeah, I think maybe just a couple of points. The one encouraging sign is the fact that the consumer rebounded very strongly. So the first quarter we were down minus 2.7, now they're up 4.7. So I think from the point that we're a consumer-based economy, we were very worried in the first quarter that the consumer is under severe pressure. So it seems like, you know, there's been a bit of recovery. For second half of this year, the kind of indicators that we're seeing right now, you know, it's a little bit mixed. You know, the PMI numbers came out earlier as well. It's below 50, so that's not really pointing to expansion. So I think for the third quarter, we'll probably see another positive number, but definitely not as strong as 2.5. Again, back to that 1%, what concerns me is the fact that the population is growing at 1.6. So, you know, from that point of view, that's why I call it an economic drought, because we're not making progress per person. We need to get growth 3.5%, 4% plus to actually make a massive benefit in terms of the sustainability of the issues that we face on a daily basis.
Well, the South African Reserve Bank gave us a 25 basis points cut. They're due to meet sometime this month. Could we possibly get another 25 basis point cut given the economic number that we saw coming through today?
Yeah, I think, you know, they focus on inflation. Inflation is coming down nicely, and I think that's a function of the stability that we've seen in the currency over the past 12 to 18 months. There's a real risk still that, you know, if you look at the deterioration in the government finances, budget is coming up next month. Growth for 2017 is still going to be weak despite this number. So hopefully not, but we might see another downgrade early next year, and that will actually cause the rand to weaken again and will cause inflation to rise middle of next year and later on. So I don't think the Reserve Bank is probably in a rush to reduce rates quite a bit, but I do think the intention is there that they will like to actually provide some stimulus. So maybe I think definitely another cut before the end of this year.
Not so long ago, it would be unthinkable to talk about growth without talking about mining. Now, it's a much less important part of the picture than it was, but it's still important.
No, very important, yeah. I think what we did see in the numbers, exports rebounded strongly as well. Mining is doing well, so at least what that is telling us that the link between us and the rest of the world is still working. Because what we do know year to date is that we're seeing a synchronized recovery in the global economy. China is doing better. Over the past couple of months, we've seen some rebound in commodity prices, so it's good to see that we still benefit from that. Although it's a smaller part of the economy, it's still a major job creator, and it is still a very big contributor to the fiscus in terms of tax revenue.
Well, it's not a creator anymore, isn't it? I mean, it's a major employer, but
yes.
It's getting smaller.
It is getting smaller, so you're right, it is a smaller portion of the economy, but that's also why I say that if you think about where we sit currently as a country, mining, manufacturing, agriculture, that's really where we need to start creating jobs. You're right to say that it is a shrinking industry, but it doesn't mean that we can't use the current driving engines in the economy to create more jobs. That's what we need to do.
Thanks so much for joining us, Maarten Ackerman, Chief Economist and Advisory Partner at Citadel.